Don't miss My World with Mike Iaconelli as he spends a day on the water and in the world of some of the best professional athletes Mondays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Waypoint TV. Tune in to the newest season of Hunt Club with Philip Culpepper on Waypoint TV. Experience the highs, lows, and extreme fun of hunting the southern turkey woods every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Waypoint TV.
4-hour on the water experience on a big boat, small boat, many people, just a few people, maybe just your family. Could be anything from a flats boat, 17-foot flats boat, to a 3-story dinner boat, where we have 140 veterans on it. So it runs the gamut. We can have multiple boats. Sometimes when we work with Freedom Boat Club or we do a fishing tournament, we may have 14 boats. Or in Atlanta, we had 90 boats.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, coming to you from the Lance Chuck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio, Master Captain Angie Scott.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast. This week, I'm excited to introduce you to the amazing Debbie Frankel, co-founder of Freedom Waters Foundation. They do outstanding work to get people with special needs and veterans out on the water. But before we get into that, in case you haven't heard, the show is up for Best Outdoor Podcast of 2022 for the third year in a row. We took home the title the first 2 years, and now it's time to earn it back. But I need each and every one of you to help, and time is super short. If you're listening to this episode on the date that it was released, you can go cast your vote right now for the show because voting ends at midnight. I put a link to the Facebook poll in the show notes for this episode, so it couldn't be any easier. It's literally 3 clicks. Click the link, then click the link in the Facebook poll to extend the list to all 37 nominees. Find the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, and then click the box next to the name of the show. That's it. You're done, and you just made a huge step to help promote the show and keep it going for years to come. Again, voting ends at midnight tonight. You can only vote once, so please also hit the share button and ask your friends to vote for the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast as well. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get into this week's episode with my special guest, Debbie Frankel. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast. Down here in sunny Fort Myers, Florida, sitting outside of the Lance Truck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio. And I have a special guest who came by to visit me this afternoon, Debbie Frankel. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Angie.
So, Debbie, you're the co-founder of an organization called Freedom Waters Foundation.
That is correct.
So we definitely want to talk about that. If you wouldn't mind, just start off, give us a little background on yourself and kind of how what led you to starting that organization.
So, again, my name's Debbie Frankel. I'm the founder of Freedom Waters Foundation. My co-founder is a 35-plus year yacht broker and a 6-time cancer survivor, wow. John Weller. But I'm the one who's done all the work, so I like to call myself the founder and him the co-founder. We are 17 years old. I incorporated in 2006. Our front mission is enhancing the lives of people with special needs and veterans, and that includes people with life-threatening illnesses, youth at risk, and putting them on the water for therapeutic reasons. As we all know, who love the water, just being out in nature and on the water makes us all feel good. So yes. That's the premise behind Freedom Waters Foundation. We use private and commercial boats to take people out, so we own no boats. So that's the other piece of my back mission, which is to bring people together and build a greater sense of community by bringing people together who might not otherwise ever meet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about this, but it's kind of funny. I work for Freedom Boat Club.
Oh.
And so I'm sure you're probably familiar with that company. But, that's one of the nice things is we don't own boats. We just get to take them out and use them and enjoy them.
Yeah, well, in fact, Freedom Boat Club is one of our sponsors, partners, and I've been working with John Giglio since he started the company.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, I didn't figure with the name, because I did read kind of the background on how you came up with the name, but I wondered if there was any interaction in between the two.
Yeah, definitely interaction. We partner. We use his boats and some of his members, both on this coast and on the other coast of Florida. We're working on a larger partnership, hopefully to go nationwide. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Maybe we'll get to work with you guys in Nashville.
That'd be
back
awesome.
In Tennessee, yeah. So, talk a little bit about the reasoning behind the name Freedom Waters.
So when I started the organization back in 2006, I was writing the business plan, and my last name is Frankel, and my co-founder's name is Weller, and I just wrote the business name Frankel and Weller just to have something in there, but we never wanted it to be named after us. Mm-hmm. And I called a friend of mine who is a Paralympic sailor, and I said, Bob, why do you keep going out to the sailboat? What's that all about? And he's like, it's the freedom, Deb. It's the freedom. And I was like, okay, thank you. And so freedom became the first word, and waters was the obvious second word. Right. And then it represents my last name with the F and represents my co-founder's name with the W. So it worked all the way around. So that's how we came up with Freedom Waters Foundation.
Very cool. So I want to talk a little bit more about what the organization does, and get into a little bit more of the specifics and like what type of events you do. But I do want to touch on, when I was reading a little bit about your background, you were also the chairperson for the U.S. Disabled Sailing Championship.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit further because you asked me how I started this whole thing, and I'll just roll back a little bit. Like, I never dreamed of, I want to start a nonprofit. That was never anywhere in my psyche. In fact, I really feel like I channeled this whole organization. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by profession, and I was working for an inner city high school in Chicago and had a private practice on the side and was just getting really burnt out. And I started seeing sailboats in my head everywhere, and like literally in my head. And so I went to learn how to sail, and there was a disabled sailing program there, so I helped volunteer at the disabled sailing program. So that was sort of my entry into the disabled boating world.
Gotcha.
And then I sort of made a self-made Peace Corps around disabled sailing, and I traveled to go Australia and Canada, and I pulled boats across the country with a van doing demonstrations on disabled sailing. I became the chair for the National Disabled Sailing Championship for U.S. Sailing for 4 years. I wrote the manual on how to start a disabled sailing program for U.S. Sailing. So I was pretty, entrenched in that for a long time, until I was tired of living out of a suitcase and being poor. And then I landed in South Florida. And then there's more to the journey, but ultimately I landed in a nonprofit that wanted me to start a disabled sailing program in Fort Lauderdale, and I worked for them for 3 years. And at that time, I started most of our programs. And then they closed their doors in October of 2005, which is when John Weller called me and said, did you decide what you're going to do yet? And I said, no. And he's like, well, start your own foundation. You need your own foundation. And I said, all right, I have $1,000 in the bank. I have no clue how to do that, but I'm going to do it, and you're the co-founder. So
that's great.
That is a 10-year story in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and now 17 years later, here we are.
17 years later, here we are.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So over the years, like, what kind of, events and things do you do specifically with the foundation?
So our main program is our Weller Days, which I named after John because his last name's Weller. And, when you get on the water, you get Weller, right?
Absolutely.
So I named that so that he would have something named after him forever. And those can be a 1 to 4 hour on the water experience on a big boat, small boat, many people, just a few people, maybe just your family. Could be anything from a flats boat, 17-foot flats boat, to a 3-story dinner boat, where we have 140 veterans on it. So it runs the gamut. We can have multiple boats. Sometimes when we work with Freedom Boat Club or we do a fishing tournament, we may have 14 boats. Or in Atlanta, we had 90 boats. Wow. And we did... so in most recently we expanded to Atlanta and Indiana, and in both areas we did weekend programs where we had veterans go out on one day and kids with special needs and their families go on another day. And the last one in Atlanta, which was last September, we did 461 people 641 people on the water with 90 boats over the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it mostly just going out and cruising with them, or do you do fishing?
Well, that's only one thing. So it's our Weller days. Within those Weller days, we also do fishing.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to get out fishing, and it can be either backwater or deep sea, depending on the boat and the situation and the people on board. So we've done both. And again, both coasts of Florida. In Atlanta and Indiana, it was just cruising. And then we also do 2 fishing tournaments for at-risk youth. And one is called Boys and Bait, B-U-O-Y-S, Boys and Bait. And the girls is Heels and Reels, which Debbie Hansen helped us start.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so those are just for fun. They're not, they're competitive, but they're competitive for most fished, littlest fished, most unusual fish, and the smallest fish.
I would probably catch the most unusual fish.
I'm sure. Sometimes they come in with a tire and they say, "Does this count?" So we do that, and then we have a sailing program in Naples that we help start with the county, and that's for disabled people, where we teach them how to sail up to their ability. But we also do sailing on big water too. It all depends on what boats we get and what people want to do, and we do as much as we can about matching the need with the people. So if we have somebody in a wheelchair, or somebody, I've had a young girl on a ventilator in an electric wheelchair who her mom thought she would never get on a boat.
Yeah.
And we got her on a boat, safe for her, and more than once. So we work with the people's needs and what needs to happen.
Gotcha. So how do you go about finding boats to use, and I imagine you need captains as well?
Well, most of the boats come with their own captains, unless it's like a club, and then we try to get the members. But we just do a lot of PR and marketing. I mean, and also, again, after 17 years, there's a reputation there, so people get referred to us also.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. What would you say has been like some of the biggest challenges you've faced over the years?
Natural challenges would be hurricane, most recently, COVID, the BP spill. Those would be the natural disasters that were challenges that we had to sometimes come off the water for a couple months and do connect with people in other ways. Like during COVID, I'm just going to give an example.
Yeah.
During COVID, we couldn't be on the water. We couldn't even be together. No one could. So a group of volunteers and myself came up with a deck of cards. And the deck of cards we custom made. We custom designed every individual card. So in the cards, the clubs are all about boats. Like each card says something about boats. Each spade says something about sea life. Each diamond says something about how water is connected to humans. And each heart is a heartfelt quote from myself. And so we mailed out 3,500 of those, thinking that people could play either solitaire by themselves, or they could play with their families within their household and still learn something or be inspired by something.
Very cool.
So we always, and during the hurricane, we just had to twist and all right, now we need to do hurricane relief, for the time period. So those were the most natural challenges. Challenges always are fundraising and publicity and awareness. I think those are the biggest challenges for a nonprofit.
Yeah. How do you go about raising money to support the organization?
So I would say 80% of our funding comes from private donors, but we do have a big fundraiser that we do every year in Naples. We hope to grow our fundraisers to other areas as well, but the big one we do in Naples is called the Kind Mariners Ball. It's being held at February 23rd, 2023 at the Naples Sailing and Yacht Club. It's a beautiful, fun party. It's not a black tie stuffy thing. It's a really come and have a great time. And this year the theme is Anchored by Love.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything you've got coming up that you want to mention, or anything we didn't cover that you feel like would be important to mention?
I think if anyone's interested in coming out with us, just you can go on our website and sign up as a participant. Or if you're a boat owner in either South Florida or on either coast, or in Georgia or Indiana, which is where we are right now, or if you're a member of Freedom Boat Club, you can just go to our website and sign up. It's www.freedomwatersfoundation.org, or you can call us at 239-263-2377.
Awesome, and I imagine you accept online donations if somebody just wants to support the organization?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'll put a link to the website in the show notes for this episode. Make it really easy for anybody to click on, go through, check it out, read through the About page, and find out more. And if you want to support, they will definitely accept your your support. So, Debbie, thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. It's a beautiful day, and so I'm glad we were able to meet, and I'm excited to get the word out to our audience about the foundation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angie, and best wishes to you, too, in your tournament.
Thank you.